Welcome, everyone. My name is Derek Mosley. I'm the director of Marquette Law School's Lubar Center for Public Policy Research and Civic Education. And I wanted to welcome you to our On the Issues program. But I also wanted you all to know that the Lubar Center did not bring our guest here by ourselves. We collaborated with a number of groups. One of the groups that we collaborated with was the Andrew Center for Restorative Justice, which is run by their director who's present, Mary Prejean. There's Mary. Oh, there you are. There you go. Thank you, Mary. And we also partnered with a student group, the Public Interest Law Society, or PILS, and we are happy to have Annie Tate here with us. Annie, could you come on up?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Annie Tate, and I have the privilege of speaking on behalf of Marquette's Public Interest Law Society, or PILS. When I first came to law school, I quickly realized that PILS is more than a student organization. It's a community, a place where students come together because we believe that the law can be a tool for justice, and even as students, we can make a real difference. We're so grateful to the Lubar Center to inviting us to collaborate on today's event, and especially honored to welcome attorney Calvin Duncan, whose story captures the spirit of what drives us. At its heart, PILS has three main goals, each one rooted in the same spirit of service. First, we connect students to opportunities in public interest law. Through panels, mentorship, and programming, we help students see the many ways that lawyers serve individuals and communities who face barriers to justice. Second, we raise funds for PILS fellowships, which allow Marquette Law students to spend their summers working in public interest organizations across this country. From legal aid offices to public defenders to nonprofits, each fellow contributes 350 hours of service, but what they gain in perspective and purpose lasts far beyond the summer. And third, we support the Office of Public Service in its pro bono initiatives, encouraging all students to live out Marquette's Jesuit values by serving others, putting into action our commitment to be men and women with and for others. Looking ahead, we are especially excited for our PILS Giving Challenge Days coming up on November 17th and 18th, which raise important funds to support our summer PILS fellows. The celebration concludes with our annual potluck-style dinner on Tuesday, November 18th, right outside in Zilber Forum. The evening includes a night of conversation, good food, and even the now famous table tennis games against our professors, all to support our summer fellows. On behalf of all of us in PILS, thank you for being here today. And to Attorney Duncan, thank you for sharing your story and reminding of what it means to use our education to serve justice and to strengthen communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Annie. And could you all join me in welcoming our guest, my friend, Attorney Calvin Duncan. Thank you. All right, Calvin, we're going to jump on into it real quick. So you actually were raised in New Orleans, correct?
Yes.
All right. Can you tell me a little bit about your childhood?
Well, I had a terrible, terrible childhood. Really terrible. Yeah, my mom died when I was 7, so it was my sister and I, my two brothers went with their father, but my sister and I, we was bounced around from family to family and family, abused, tortured, the whole works. And so it was so bad, but I liked this school. So when I got to the 9th grade, I started shoplifting, stealing for clothes, and also to help my sister out as well. And so that pretty much tell you that how my childhood was like, that I had to actually start stealing for clothes just to stay in school. And at 14 years old, I ruined my life.
We'll get into that. that. But somehow you make your way to Oregon.
Yes.
Okay, what brought you to Oregon?
So, I was raised, we knew at a young age that we was gonna go to prison or get killed. So in 1982, I decided to leave. I caught a ride with my cousin to California, and I immediately signed up to go to the Job Corps again. And what they did was assign me, gave me the ticket to go to the Job Corps in Mount Hood, Oregon, Timberlake Job Corps.
And how'd you like that?
I loved it. The trees, the mountains. As a matter of fact, I had friends, and for some reason we thought that we could capture the deer, and we would just run like some of us would go that way and that way, and we just and I loved it so much. And although they had the issues with race back then, but being in those mountains really gave me the peace that I needed to start healing. And it was an experience that I held on to, although, eventually when I got locked up, it was knowing that it was a place where I found so much peace after having grew up the way that I had grown up.
In fact, when I came and picked you up from the hotel to come over here, you saw the leaves here and you were like, this reminds me of Oregon.
Yeah, it's like all the trees, mountains, I always say, this is Oregon.
We don't have mountains, though. We don't have mountains. But something happened in Oregon. You got a phone call from your aunt. Tell me about that phone call.
Yeah, so I called home, and my aunt, Bernetta, she said, Calvin, she said, where you at? I said, well, I'm in the Job Corps. He said, boy, they got you on TV saying that you killed somebody. I'm saying, no. I said, no, that's a mistake. That's not me. Whoever they're looking for, it can't be me, because I didn't do it. And she kept saying, Calvin, I'm telling you, you on TV, you wanted for murder. And I'm like, no, and I just put it out the back of my mind.
But then some detectives show up.
Yeah, like 2 months later, two detectives, no, not before that, I called home and she said, boy, where you at? I said, I'm still in the Job Corps. She said, they had on the news that you was arrested. And then that's when I told her, I told you they wasn't looking for me because they had arrested somebody else. But then later, two detectives from Oregon showed up at the Job Corps, and they told me that I had a warrant for my arrest for murder, and that I had to be arrested and extradited to back to New Orleans.
And what happened when you got to New Orleans?
So when I got to New Orleans, they put me on a unit with guys that had already had the death penalty. Some of them had life sentences. Some had been in prison for 15, 20 years. And all of them was telling me that I was going to get the death penalty. And I'm like, but I didn't commit the crime. And he said, look, let me tell you something. You have the same lawyer I had. You have the same judge. I had a judge, his name is Frank Shea. One time he had 6 felony jury trials in one day. And he also said that you have the same prosecutor. And he said, besides that, the young man in your case that was killed is a white guy. And the witness in your case is a white young lady. So that alone, they were saying, look, you're going to get executed. So then I started saying, well, how can I help myself? Because they told me that my lawyers wasn't going to come see me. And they knew exactly what they was talking about. And so I started trying to learn the law.
How'd you do that?
So they didn't have any legal material at the parish jail. So sometime I would write my girlfriend. She still was my girlfriend. Although I got my Dear John letter saying, look, I moved on. But I would write her sometime and ask her to go to the Supreme Court and get copies of cases for me. But that still wasn't enough. So then what I figured out, and I always liked it, no disrespect to anybody, I always enjoyed when wealthy people got arrested. I did, because they always put some kind of law in the newspaper. And I brought for an example to show y'all. This guy named is Aaron Mintz, wealthy guy. And every time he had to make an appearance, they would put some legal material in the newspaper. And I used to collect them. This was so I started creating my own law book. And this is way back then. We didn't have any glue in prison, so this is still gum that I would use. And each one of these newspaper articles is about Aaron Mintz's case, and they got some law in there. So this became my law book, and I used to create a lot of those every time somebody wealthy got arrested.
Now, you wrote a book, and the book's called Jailhouse Lawyer. You refer to yourself as a jailhouse lawyer, but you had that's a real title, an actual title that's given to you. Could you explain that?
Yeah, so at Angola, but before I explain that, So this became my law book, but then I actually needed a real law book because when I would go to the court, I would see this law book on those tables, and I knew them the books that I needed. So I brought a copy. I prepared a motion, and for law students, don't do this, because you would get flunked out of school for this motion. I titled the motion, "A Motion for a Law Book." That's it, it's the title, but law students, don't do it. And I wound up getting my law book. And so now I'm gonna get to the question, what happened? I'm getting older, I can't.
Oh, no, the jailhouse lawyer.
Oh, the jail, so,
The
so once I went to trial, and the guys was right. My lawyers didn't come see me. So the night before my trial, my lawyers came to saw me, my trial lawyers, to determine if I had a suit to wear. And once they found out that I had a suit to wear, the next morning I went to trial. The government position was that I should be executed, but the jury disagreed. The jury said, no, don't execute Calvin, but make sure that he spend the rest of his life in prison, and I was sentenced to life in prison. And I was transported to the Louisiana State Penitentiary, which once was the plantation where my ancestors from Africa was brought to, and they called it Angola because it's the name of the place where they was being captured and brought to America. And once I got there, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. So I found out that they had this legal program called Inmate Counsel Substitute. And I applied for the job immediately, and I got the job. And our job as an inmate counsel substitute, and I shorten it for jailhouse lawyer, we function just like lawyers, because in Louisiana, once your appeal has been processed, you're not entitled to a lawyer after that. And only people that could actually provide you with legal assistance is people like me. So at the prison, it's an official job, and I'm gonna shorten it up, a jailhouse lawyer. And they trained us actually to help people that shouldn't be in prison, that was wrongfully convicted, people on death row. And I got the job, and I was at Angola for 24 years. 23 years was just a jailhouse lawyer. 19 of those years, my job was to actually assist people that were sentenced to death. So that's how I became a jailhouse lawyer, because I had the fortune of not getting the death penalty, applying for the job, and I got it.
So what exactly did you do as this jailhouse lawyer?
So we do everything that lawyers do, everything. We spend all our time in the office, reading over transcript, trying to get people documents to prove that they didn't commit their crime, or prove that once we reviewing their records, if we determine that they wasn't afforded a fair trial, we litigate their case. We research the issues. We draft the pleadings. Only thing that we couldn't do, and the institution didn't trust us, to leave the prison to do investigation work. And
but
they
everything
could have
else.
trusted me. They could have trusted me. I would have came back. But we did everything. We give legal advice, the whole works.
And you're the only counsel that these individuals have because they've lost that right.
So it was a group of us. It's like at Angola's a big, like 18,000 acres. It's over 5,000 people in it. And it's like about 54 of us that's trained to go to really function as jailhouse lawyers in different parts of the prison.
Okay, gotcha. So you're trying to get files, trying to get records. How did you do that from inside Angola?
So the only way that we could get records is write letters to the clerk of court, to the DA's office, the whole works. But when I went to trial, those documents, like what a witness told the police, what happened when the police took the statements, they weren't considered public records, so we couldn't get them. But in 1985, they became public records, and we would write letters to these different agencies that prosecuted us, to the clerk of court, and try to get our records. So in 1985, we was allowed to get police reports. And once we started getting these police reports, we realized that, whoa, a whole bunch of people in one city, New Orleans, was wrongfully convicted. Some of them was totally innocent, some wasn't innocent, but they wasn't, the government had withheld evidence. And then we got access to the district attorney files. But the only way that we got those access to that, we had to pay for it. At Angola, when I got there, we was making 4 cents an hour. And now you make 2 cents an hour, and you don't start earning that until you've been there for 3 years. But we had to pay for our records. And as we start getting our records, they created a procedural hurdle after procedural hurdle. So to answer your question is that we had to, if you don't have a family member on the outside to help you get the records, you'll die in prison. And so that was our biggest problem, just getting access to the records.
How are you paying for the records?
Well, in my case, I would like save my incentive wages. The highest pay you could get is 20 cents an hour. I got to that level. Or I used to donate my plasma. And I did that twice a week, save the money, and then send it off to somebody to actually help that would go to the court and try to get my record. So I donated a lot of plasma. That's what we used to do.
So how receptive was the clerk in the clerk of court's office? Were they receptive to you guys filing these motions all the time?
So in New Orleans, they wasn't receptive. We would write letters after letters after letters, and they wouldn't respond. Other parishes, they would respond, but it just was New Orleans that actually we had a most difficult time. In Louisiana, we was, and we probably still is, the incarceration capital of the world. We imprison more people than any per capita than any place in the world. And most of them come from the place where I was born. That's New Orleans. But our biggest problem was that we couldn't get our records.
So I'm trying to put this all into perspective because I think people don't understand a fact that you guys used to attack all the time. Unlike Wisconsin, in Louisiana, you don't need a unanimous jury verdict. So it's possible for a jury not to agree and you still be convicted of the offense, correct?
Correct. So in Louisiana, it was only 2 states, Louisiana and Oregon, that you could, all of the jurors did not have to agree. In 9 capital cases, if 10 of the jurors say you're guilty and 2 say not guilty, you still was guilty and you would get, in a lot of cases, sentenced to life in prison. And while I was in prison, I didn't understand that rule. It was a case by the United States Supreme Court called Apodaca. And anybody in law school, anybody read the case, it don't make no sense. But it told Louisiana and Oregon, it's okay to convict people when all of the jurors don't agree. Every other state in the United States, all of the jurors have to agree, but Louisiana and Oregon. So I would still litigate those cases at Angola. But when I got out of prison, I ran across this article that says that our non-unanimous jury verdict was enacted for the sole purpose of preserving white supremacy. It's not a theory, it was documented. When they met, they put it on records. This is to preserve white supremacy. And also what it did was it made sure that during that time, the Supreme Court was telling the southern states, all the states, you have to start allowing the blacks to participate in the jury system. So what they did is said, okay, if 1 or 2 blacks get on the jury, their votes would not count. And only 2 states was like that, Louisiana and Oregon. Oregon law was intended to silence Jewish people. In Louisiana, it was blacks. So when I got out, I learned that. And I went to a lawyer named Ben Cohen. He was working for the Restorative Justice and other lawyers. And I said, look, Ben, our law is based upon white supremacy, and that is wrong. No law we shouldn't be in prison. And besides that, I had a lot of friends that was in prison that was innocent. They wouldn't have been in prison if we didn't have that law. And I explained to Ben that we need to do something about it. And Ben said, okay, if you go find the cases, we'll litigate them. And we'll litigate them to United States Supreme Court. And we did. Our 23rd petition, I'm talking over a long period of time. This is after I got out. Petition after petition after petition. In one of our petitions to the United States Supreme Court, we clearly warned them and told them, don't make us file another one. They made us file for like 3 more years. But on the 23rd petition, they said, look, we need to hear this case. And they did. And the case is Ramos versus Louisiana. It ruled that Louisiana law that was introduced for the sole purpose of preserving white supremacists, to allow people to be convicted without other jurors agreeing, was unconstitutional. It violated the 6th Amendment right to a jury verdict, and we won. However,
well, there's a big however.
Yeah.
There's a big however.
However, the question becomes, okay, Oregon, your law is unconstitutional. Louisiana, your law is unconstitutional. These people that's in prison with these non-unanimous jury verdicts, they didn't even have a jury trial. What you gonna do about it? Oregon responded with kindness, decency, respect, and honor of the Constitution and say, look, we're gonna grant everybody a new trial that had this jury verdict, and we're gonna allow the jury to redecide. In Louisiana, so the cute word, the fancy legal word for that is, in Oregon, they made it retroactive. That's the legal way of saying, I'm gonna do what justice required. So retroactive means justice required in Oregon. Louisiana, the legal word is, they didn't make it retroactive. It's not retroactive, which means, in layman terms, that all of the people that's in Angola prison serving a life sentence of hundreds of years, they're gonna have to die in prison because we're not gonna honor our constitutional right. So in Oregon, retroactive means people get the due process they're entitled to it. In Louisiana, is that no, you're gonna die in prison with that unconstitutional jury verdict.
So let's talk about Ramos. So you worked on the Ramos case, and you actually met Ramos.
Yes.
And Ramos, what happened with his case?
So in Ramos, and I had never knew this guy because I was monitored all of the appeals. When I came home, I monitored every appeal. Some people say, but you a nerd. You know how people look at computers all day. I look at cases all day. And I would notify each one of the individuals. And if they had a non-unanimous jury verdict, I would get with the jailhouse lawyers. We would appeal their cases to Louisiana Supreme Court. And then I would get pro bono lawyers in my office, the Department of Justice, Ben Cohen, and a few other lawyers, and we would petition the case pro bono. So one time when I went to Angola, I finally met, after the decision, Ramos. I'm talking about a big old guy. He come hugging me because I go to the prison a lot. People always say, Calvin, why you always go to Angola? The place that it had enslaved you and put you in bondage. And I always say, well, Moses definitely went back to Egypt and did what he's supposed to do. So I went, and this big old guy, he hugged me. I said, who this is? And the guard's looking. I said, no, this is all right. He said, look, man, thank you for everything. I got some hamburgers for you and some other guys. And Ramos did go back to trial. And the jury unanimously found him not guilty. And Ramos had facts of innocence. And that was the driving force, I think, what the Supreme Court looked at. That this man is possibly innocent. And second of all, none of our laws should be on the book preserving white supremacy. So Ramos was found not guilty and he's free. But the other guys that actually, whose conviction was final, they still in our Louisiana prisons. Unless something happened, a miracle happened, they would die there.
So let's go back to your case real quick. So on your case, you were actually, you had been in for a number of years, and you were actually offered a plea.
Yeah.
And they offered you an Alford plea. And for those who don't know, Alford plea, if you say guilty, when people say guilty, you say, yeah, I did it. If you say not guilty, I didn't do it. If you say no contest, you say, I'm not saying I did it. I'm not saying I didn't do it, but I want to take the deal or whatever might come. But Alford says, I'm saying I didn't do it, but I'll still take this plea. And that's what the plea negotiation you entered into.
Yeah, so by the time just go back, they had an intern, a third-year law student. So for the third-year law students, y'all could do a lot. I'm gonna tell you what Emily did. Emily came to the prison to see us. And we explained to Emily Moore, that was Emily Bolton. There's a lot of Emily. Any Emily is law students. Y'all got a job for y'all. Emily's. So Emily Bolton came, and we explained, I said, we can't get our records, and we innocent. And I can't help them. We're not entitled to a lawyer. Only people they have is me and other guys. And she said, once I graduate, she was going to come help us, and she did. And that's how the New Orleans Innocent Project was created. She helped us, and we probably got pro capita, the highest exoneration rate pro capita than in this whole country. But she started helping us. And then I got lost. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, the Alford plea.
Okay. So after we get all of this evidence, all of this stuff that would prove my innocence, we presented it to my judge. And he was a mean judge. His name is Julian Parker. He just is like, Jesus, what's wrong with this man? And he was like, you should have discovered this evidence 30 years ago. And I'm like, I'm in prison. I've been saving my plasma. I'm writing this governor, this letter. But he was set on denying us, and that's when the prosecutor stepped up and said, we got to help this guy. But he was bent on keeping me in prison. So, in the book, a lot of this stuff in the book, so I'm not going to tell you all of it. My judge was going on vacation, and the prosecutors had me on a docket. They say, look, if we could convince this judge to give Calvin a new trial, we'll dismiss the case. However, he wasn't going to do it, so look, if they could convince the judge that I would take an alpha plea, I would maintain my innocence, but I would plead guilty, he would take it. And that day he didn't take it and sent me back to prison to do my last Christmas, December the 10th, my last Christmas. And then in January the 7th, I always told the truth in my case that I didn't commit the crime. But this particular day, I had to lie to the court. And I lied, and I said I committed a crime that I didn't commit, and I was immediately released. Some people say, well, man, how is that possible? Well, two things could have happened. I could have continued to tell the truth and died in prison, or I could have took the deal. And I took the deal. January 7, 2011, I pled guilty to manslaughter, was given 21 years, and attempted armed robbery, and was given 49 years, and I was immediately released because by that time I had served 28 and a half years. And I got out. I had earned my freedom always in a lot of cases, we earn our freedom, although we're innocent, by confessing the crimes that we didn't commit. And I was immediately released. I didn't have anywhere to go. I lived with my lawyers, which was a law student. And I moved to the resurrection after exoneration. And then I got out on a Friday. That Tuesday, I was on Tulane campus trying to figure out how I'm going to go to law school. So I had to plead guilty to get out, but I had to do what exactly I needed to do.
And you got your bachelor's.
So after I got out, so this is a good thing. So when I got out, Friday, I went to Tulane campus. And then when I got there, I'm like, I found some clothes and stuff and dressed up. And I said, I want to sign up for law school. And some of you all probably wouldn't know this. And so when I got there, they said, no, you can't sign up for law school. You got to do this thing they call the undergrad. What is an undergrad? But I found out what undergrad is. And so I went through that. And so 2019, I got my bachelor's. I got my paralegal certificate from Tulane, associate degree from Tulane in paralegal studies, and then bachelor's degree. And now I'm ready to go to law school, and they're telling me, no. You got to take this test called the LSAT. And I always say whoever created that test, something's wrong with that person. Serious. Something is seriously wrong with that person.
Second that. Yeah, I'll second that.
But I took it, and I was slaughtered. I probably got one question right, and that probably was by accident. But I knew one thing. They didn't say I had to pass it. They just said I had to take it. So I took it. And then I applied to all of these law schools. I applied to some hell of a Harvard, Yale, Princeton. But the school that I wanted to go to, I applied to, and that was back to Portland, Oregon, Lewis and Clark. And I got accepted. And in my application, my first line, and I think Lewis and Clark, they said, we got to help this guy. My first line, I said, I am so tired of illegally practicing law. So they said, we're going to help this guy. And I got admitted because we were practicing law in prison. People say, wow, y'all could do this in prison. Help represent people and all. That's illegal practice with law. And our response is always, we already in prison, so that's okay.
You mentioned something that I should have followed up on. So when you said when you were in prison and you got all your files, you finally could get all your files. And you found out some stuff about the detectives, about the photo array. You want to share that?
Yeah, so the detective that arrested me The one that appeared at my trial, he wasn't the one that interrogated me. But then we wound up we found out why, because both of them was really arrested and booked, investigated by the federal government for trying to plant evidence on a commissioner in Oregon. And so he had pled guilty, the one that actually interrogated me. So they didn't call him, they called the other one. And I would remember telling my lawyer, that guy didn't interrogate me. He's not telling the truth. And we got all kind of evidence that they was actually crooks. Even a prosecutor there said that they wouldn't even accept cases from them. Another thing that we discovered, these years, like 20 years after I've been in prison, we found the handwritten notes of the prosecutor actually plotting to convict me. We found out that the photo array, it included non-Black people. We found out that the witness didn't give a positive identification like she had testified to. We found out that my prosecutor, which is Harry Connick at the time, his whole belief was that he would never comply with the United States Supreme Court case called Brady versus Maryland, that says that the prosecutor has to turn over favorable evidence to the defendant in order to make sure that due process is served. But with all this evidence, and then I found out that what my aunt was telling me, that I got arrested, but I wasn't arrested. So we found out who that person was, and his name was Henry Duncan. But we don't know exactly how they relieved him of but they targeted me. They submitted their case to the jury that it was a positive identification when it wasn't. That I had gave statements to these crooked cops that they lied. We proved that the statements that they say that I told them, with the statement that they testified that I told them was a statement that they actually told me, and that was documented. And a Crime Stopper tip did not identify me. It was identifying another Calvin Duncan, but not me. So that proved that the government case was fabricated from the beginning. But like I said earlier, by the time we found all this out, we was procedurally barred, because in Louisiana, we don't have lawyers. And we have a time limitation in order to get in court.
The photo array is the one that just gets me, because they said it was, a Black male committed this offense, but you had an Asian male, 2 white guys in the photo array, and then you, right? Could you pick out who did it? Oh, well, it's that guy, right?
Yeah. Again, then when my lawyers actually finally got some help, they would interview the lady, the witness, and she really, she told them that she had printed my picture out because she wanted to see me in person. In order to get me in person, they had to fake a grand jury indictment. That's the only way that they could actually get me in person. So they actually did that.
Now, you mentioned just a few minutes ago that you had to essentially lie,
Yeah.
right? And to get out, to say, yeah, I did something that you didn't do. And that actually comes back to bite you, because you actually are a second-year law student when you were exonerated,
Yeah.
correct? And you wanted to get reparations, right? You were in prison, and you were wrongly in prison, and you wanted to get reparations. Tell us how that process went.
So while I'm thinking about law school, everybody's telling me, Calvin, you can't, even if you make it through law school, you're not going to get barred because you're a convicted felon. And I'm like, I still want to go to law school. But a miracle happened. In my second year of law school, Louisiana passed a law that gave the prosecutors, the judge, and the defense lawyers an opportunity to get together. If you got evidence of innocence, you could actually present it to the court. So that was like 10 years after I got out. And I learned of that law. My lawyers, the same prosecutor that was trying to help me way in 2002, he was at that office. He came back to work, and he remembered my case. And so what he did is actually submitted my case took my case and actually reviewed it, make sure that he was right when he was trying to help me a long time ago. And they presented my case to the judge, 2021. And the prosecutor, the judge, and my lawyer, prosecutor vacated my conviction, vacated the indictment, dismissed it with prejudice. The judge vacated my conviction, and I was totally exonerated. And that's how, and then when I went to law school, Lewis and Clark were like, thank you. And so that's how I actually was exonerated. Our legislature, I'm always say that God touched their heart just for me, get this law passed, and I got exonerated. And then I graduated, and then I had a year, I applied for my compensation. I said, okay, I'm exonerated. In Louisiana, you get up to $400,000, 10,000 or 40,000 for a year for a 10-year period. I applied for it. And the attorney general now that's in Louisiana, Liz Morrell, she sent word to me through her attorney generals that you tell Calvin, if he continue to pursue this compensation, first of all, she opposed every compensation request for all of the people in Louisiana. I don't know what's her deal with it, but she got a hell of a deal with it. She said, tell Calvin that if he continue to pursue this, I'm gonna prosecute him for first, he lied to get out of prison.
What?
He confessed to a crime that he didn't commit. If that don't get him, that petition he filed that said that he didn't commit the crime shows that, well, in 2011 you say you committed a crime, now 2021 you're saying you didn't do it. That's perjury. And if that don't get him, you tell Calvin, I said, I'm gonna report him to the Bar Association so he do not get his license. So I know she couldn't prosecute me for lying to get out. I didn't sign my petition, so she would have to go after my lawyers for that. Then I probably would be keeping all the paper articles on him. But I wanted to actually become a licensed lawyer to practice. So I gave up my request for compensation so that she do not oppose me. But she reneged on that, and I'll tell y'all about that later.
And so, but you did receive some type of compensation from the state of Louisiana.
So when people say, how much did you get for your wrongful conviction? I say, I got a $10 check. And I still have that $10 check. That's the only thing that I got was my freedom and a $10 check.
So you then found the Light of Justice program. Tell me about that. What does it do?
Yeah, so once I got out, I just could not leave the people in prison behind. So when I got out January the 7th, and I went to our clerk of court and started trying to get records, and I couldn't get it. So I started this organization, the Light of Justice, and I help people in prison get access to the court by going to get their records, making sure that they have updated case law, going back to the prison to provide training. And so that's the Light of Justice is that organization that helps people in prison that cannot afford lawyers. And that's what I've been doing since I came home. But when I first came home and I couldn't get records, I really got upset. And I said that I was going to run for this position whenever it became available. But I had to do some hard stuff. That is, I had to do that undergrad stuff. Then that LSAT stuff. And then that law school stuff. And I told that my commencement speech I gave earlier, I thought prison was hard until I went to law school. And then law school is no joke, but I made it, and the rest of us gonna make it. Then I graduated with my JD. Early this year, I got an honorary degree from Loyola.
And actually, the president, Dr. Xavier Cole, is from Marquette.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Dr. Cole. Yep.
So look at the connection, small world. And I got my honorary degree, commencement speaker, and then the book was released. It was in July. I don't remember what dates because everything is it's too foggy now. It was released. The book release was on a Thursday. The next day, I went by some friend's house. I said, as soon as that position at the clerk office that kept me in prison all those years become available, I'm running. I'm ready. I got my undergrad. I got my JD. I got my honorary degree. I got my organization. I got Ramos, the demonstration that we have to do better, and some other cases under my belt. And then that was Thursday, Friday. I'm saying, as soon as it become available, I'm running. And one of my friends said, Calvin, this position is open now, and the day is a deadline. And I'm like, oh, man. I said, when another election is? He said, 4 years from now. I said, no, I can't wait 4 years. Then a friend, Norris, came and said, Calvin, I forgot to tell you, the clerk position is available. What you want to do? I said, I still want to run. And I immediately qualified. I went down there. We got to the court 2 hours before the deadline. I had my 250, and I qualified. As soon as we got there, they said, no, you got to have $500. Like, oh, man. But it was a bunch of, like 16 of us. And we started hustling. Get $10 from there, 4 from here, 30 from there. We came up with the money. And I immediately qualified. And all hell broke loose since then.
And you're actually in that election right now.
Yes.
So just so everybody knows, Calvin's election is next week, but he still agreed to come here today to be with us. So thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
You've had some spirited debates. I've been following it online. He's brought up everything. Still maintains that you were never exonerated.
Yeah, the same attorney general. I don't know which, really, I think she really likes me. I don't know, but I'm not going on no date, none of that stuff. I'm finished. She done lost the opportunity. So during the primaries, she actually sided with my opponent, and she wrote me this long letter, and she sent it to all of the news people, saying, Calvin, I'm telling you, you stop saying you've been exonerated. I don't like the way it went down that you was really exonerated. And this and all. Then the newspaper get it, and then my opponent, they were saying, Calvin lying, he ain't exonerated. He's a convicted murderer. And this and this and that and all the, that got him some votes during the primary. That did got him like, but then we was able to respond. The prosecutor came up and showed, look, all of this is a lie. This man is exonerated. I wasn't his lawyer. This stuff went up above, I had nothing to do with the plea deal. It was by a prosecutor that had nothing to do with the case. The whole works. But during the primary, he got his votes, and I got my votes. There was 3 of us in the race. I got more votes than he did. And so now, but there was 3 people in the race. Now, he and I is in a runoff. Early voting was last Saturday, and one of the newspapers said after the runoff, after I made it to the pass, got more votes than him, it said the jailhouse lawyer in the runoff. I gotta actually keep that paper. I love to see that. But yeah, so I'm actually running for the office, and the reason why I'm running for that office is to make sure that what happened to me don't happen to nobody else. And now we got public records documents that really shows that it explains why New Orleans people stay in prison for so long. It does. And so now the newspaper articles, news people is actually running those stories as I speak, because now it's the proof. This was what's really happening in this office that the public just didn't know about it, and we have to reform it. So the story is, I'm running for the same office to make sure that what happened to me don't happen to nobody else. And yes, and our debate was heated. He calling me, a convicted murderer. I'm like, then my daughter said, Calvin, Daddy, people gonna see through that. Why? Because if you was a cold-blooded murderer, he wouldn't be saying this about you. I said, that makes a lot of sense. And people did see through that. They saw that he was really desperate, lying about everything about my case. And then my record's been expunged. And in Louisiana, once the record's expunged, nobody could have access to it. But he has a photo, and I make a joke of it. And I told him the other day, I said, you got a photo of me when I was 15, because he used that to show that, that I was a convicted murderer and all that stuff. I said, I want that photo because I have no photos of me when I was a kid. I said, so you got to violate the law again and give me that photo that you got. And he's like, no. But yeah, I am in a heated battle to make sure that what happened to me don't happen to nobody else.
Now, I'm going to bring it all the way back from when we started before I open it up for questions. I asked you said you wanted to go into it right away about, at 14, I ruined my life. Why do you say that?
Because had I not got caught and did the shoplifting, they would never have had a mugshot of me. And without that mugshot, I would have never been misidentified. So I always say I ruined my life. But even though that was bad that I was arrested when I was 19, I did, you know what? I did good things in prison. I saw studying the law. And one of the things that I noticed when studying the law, and this is for the law students, remember this, because the professors, I think I got to remind them of this too as well. Half of our Bill of Rights, half of them, for sure, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 8th. And the first, that is, petition the government when you're being aggrieved and access to the court. That's half of our Bill of Rights. Back then, when the people was thinking about forming this government, half of our Bills of Rights was enacted and ratified to protect people accused of crimes. And that is a hell of a statement. You know, in law school, we spend a lot of time on the first, free speech. The second, you know we spend a lot of time on the second. But do we spend as much time on the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 8th? Because they are our protection. And it was introduced for the sole purpose of protecting people accused of crimes. Now, somebody might argue, because I know I'm in the law school, but Calvin, you know, back then that was for white men. Okay, we all agree with that, and that was for the federal government. But since then, as a country, we have included everybody. So now we all supposed to have all these protections that make this country a free country, and those protections have to be protected against people diluting them, like the 6th Amendment right to counsel. Louisiana, we don't have a lawyer after the appeal process. Due process is being watered down. So my advice and my charge to all of the law students is always do like I did. Pick one of the amendments, dig a trench, and defend it until help comes. We have a lot of people defending the First Amendment, free speech. We have a lot of people defending the Second. We need a lot of people to start defending the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, and the 8th. Because it was those people back then knew that we need to protect people that can't protect themselves. And the Constitution is the only thing that we have to do that, to provide that. Another thing that I always say to law students, and I said it during my commencement, law schools give us a powerful tool. The most powerful tool that you could have in this country. Knowledge of the law and how to wield it. How to wield it says a lot about who we are. We could wield it with abuse, or we could wield it with dignity and honor, with respect, that is, standing up for people that can't stand up for themselves, or we could use it to crush people. Well, back then, they didn't want it to be used to crush people, because half of the Bill of Rights is directed for helping people that is accused of crimes, and those, people, need the protection. So my charge to the law students always is, you're gonna make it through law school. And law school is hard, and once you make it, you have, if I was a knight that I could knight all the law school students, I would do it. Because law school is hard, and it's supposed to be hard, because we are given a tool to do good, or we could use that tool for bad. What I love about Lewis and Clark, and I'm quite sure that you all have the same principle. What we learned in Lewis and Clark was that, okay, we're gonna teach you the law, but don't forget about the people. The first year, you're all about the person. You read these cases to see an injustice happening, we get indignant. The second year, they brainwash us to start thinking about the rule of law. The third year, you learn, okay, we learn the rule of law, and now we find out when we learn that the rule of law is causing harm, we have to do something about it. Like I learned that the rule of law on non-unanimous jury was causing a lot of harm. And it was sanctioned by the United States Supreme Court. The question was, did the United States Supreme Court know that that law is causing so much havoc? It took me a long time to get around to it, but it happened. And now that rule is unconstitutional. And the point that I'm making is that as law students, we learn the law, we learn First, we learn about people. We learn how these laws are affecting people. Third year, we prepare ourselves to go out into the world. When we see that laws are causing harm, we do something about it and not sit idle and let it happen. That's my charge to law school, to law students, and for ordinary citizens. And we always remember, half of the Bill of Rights was directed to protecting people accused of crime. That is a hell of a statement. Some people ask me, I'm gonna end with this, why I keep going? What keeps me going? They got people that's coming from all over the world, they're trying to come to this country. And if they read the Constitution like I read, it's a hell of a document, especially those Bill of Rights, now that they're applicable to all of us. And that is a hell of a statement. And I would do this, I love doing it, because I like going find issues. I like when people say, man, this law, they got this traffic cameras at this red light. And they know that this traffic cameras, all these young people, they hadn't developed, and they just love speeding through that one, and they know it. So that traffic camera is causing harm. How can we do something better? And then I'm like, okay, we could create those big old humps in the street. And that'll slow them down. Let's try that. But I want to thank you all for having me. It's always a privilege really to talk about my experience. The book talks about a lot of it.
And he will be available to sign books.
And I want to end with this, that I'll write the counsel. Law students will remember this easily because they're in the midst of it. Some of us, we've been out of law school too long. I would write the counsel on the Sixth Amendment. The case is Gideon versus Wainwright. The guy's name is Clarence Gideon. And I won't cold call. Can anybody say who was Clarence Gideon? I'm not going to cold call. And that's supposed to be a joke because in law school, we don't like to cold call them. Everybody knows. But Clarence Gideon was a jailhouse lawyer. He was in jail. And he read the Constitution to mean it means that everybody be treated fairly, and just because you're poor, you still should get the resource. So Clarence Gideon was a lawyer, was a jailhouse lawyer. So am I. And I love that article that's in the paper that said a jailhouse lawyer made it to the runoff. Thank you.
Any questions for our guest?
We're going to start with a law student first.
Hi. So how do you think lawyers, policymakers, and the public often misunderstand life about prison and the justice system?
That's a good question. And I think it starts with they have no clue. They've never been to prison. They don't go visit the prison. Go visit the prison. Go hear it. I think the misunderstanding because the people that have the power never experience how these laws are applying to people. So I think the misunderstanding is that they don't. Angola, they have federal judges would come to Angola on a regular basis. We had a courthouse, a federal courthouse, just for the federal judges. And they would come have trials at the penitentiary. And that's how our penitentiary changed, because the people that had the power started coming in and talking and find out how it's being ran, and it changed. It changed. Angola was once the bloodiest prison in America. Now you hear all these people like the Billy Graham family saying, and experts saying it's probably the safest prison in America. It was because people that had the authority to make changes went and saw and realized, it's a big disconnect. I think that's where the misunderstanding happens, is that they don't have no clue of what's really on the other side.
I think you do a good job in the book getting us to know people like Big Dugga and Terrence and all that.
Yeah.
So it helps. It gives you a good picture. And before we go on to the next question, I just wanted to point something out. I had a law student come up to me and say, hey, I just finished this book. I want to know if the Lubar Center would think about bringing this gentleman here. John Lawless, is he here? John, can you stand? It's because of John Lawless that you are here today, Calvin.
Thank you, John. I've had a wonderful time since I've been here. Thank you.
Thank you for being here and sharing your story and all your hard work. So just when I met you this afternoon, I told you that last week the Andrews Center brought about 5 students, 4 community members, and others into Racine Correctional to do our semester Restorative Justice Healing Circle. And what you said to me was like, we need that in Angola. Yes. And I offered to come to help you with a circle, but you'd have to facilitate it.
Okay, thank you.
But you mentioned something that we see all the time. You mentioned there's a lot of trauma that happens before people are incarcerated, happens during incarceration. Can you tell us a little bit more about sort of the men in Angola and what you saw?
Yeah, so one of the things, we had some sessions, we would look out for each other mentally. And what we all learned about during our group session, therapeutic sessions, you know, we all, like, I thought I was a lawyer. We had some guys thought they were psychologists and this. Good thing about Angola, you could be whatever you want. They had Muhammad Ali's, they had L. Jordans, they had it all. And so we would have some, you know, without the education, the formal education. And what we all realized that our trauma started in our own home. It started there. Before we even got exposed to the world, we was being mentally abused. Our brains was being destroyed. Now we have enough science that talks about when kids are experiencing that type of drama, what it does to us mentally.
I think it's going to be the last one.
And it messes us up as kids. It messes us up so bad, the United States Supreme Court, I don't know what the year was, but it was recently, the issue was whether it was okay to execute kids. Because, you know, up in the 80s, it was okay, all the way up until sometime in the 90s. But the United States Supreme Court, as science started developing, looking at kids' brain, our United States Supreme Court said no more of that. It violates the 8th Amendment to execute kids. So now people from, 17 on down cannot be executed because they have done the work. So what we realized on the inside was that our trouble started, our abuse, the reconstruction of our minds where we couldn't actually rationalize or weigh things out before we act, that impulsiveness, it happened in our own home. Abuse after abuse after abuse after abuse. Some people ask me, well, what about, what do you think should happen? I think that we should actually come to grips that some of these kids are getting messed up in their homes. And it's causing them to act out in school. It's causing them to, you know, grow up into adulthood and cannot make reasonable decisions and act reasonably because of that. That's what we realized when we was in prison. But what we did realize that at a certain age, when we turned 24, we start thinking differently. And that's why, you know, in the book, it talks about people like Norris, Chico, Duggar. All those guys was older, and we would take, even when I became that age, we would take young people and help them. We couldn't heal them because we didn't have the expertise, but we could talk about what we went through. And then we realized that really a lot of our stuff started at home. Now, what can we do now? And we all developed the attitude that we could serve our community, although it was in prison, and to make sure that other people have an opportunity, and if they are given an opportunity to get out, that they would help to generate the people that's on the outside. But that trauma is in our home. I'm talking about the stuff that, you know, I thought my life was terrible, but listen to some of my friends talk about what, you know, why they dropped out of school, why they couldn't, their brains couldn't grasp these things, and then why they couldn't make healthy decisions, and why they were so angry because of that stuff that happened in our home. And I'm not saying that it was other stuff, but we concentrated on how did we get from being good kids to kids stealing cars and shoplifting and stuff like that.
Hi, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not sure if this is an appropriate question. It's sort of a philosophical question. And that is, so I'm not sure how I would frame it. If you had a circle and that circle was truth, and you did a Venn diagram in that, how much would justice overlap truth or if it's better to say, how much would law and justice overlap truth, and how much would be not in that ballgame? That make any sense?
I don't fully understand it, but I could try.
Okay.
When I hear the word justice, if justice means treating each other fairly, justice means that treating a poor people like a rich person, justice meaning that just taking the power of law that you have and making sure that it's not causing no harm. That's my understanding of justice in a nutshell. I think as a country, we enact laws that would reflect that, but then we don't know what the intent of the person that introduced the law, and we pass it. But I think it becomes our responsibility once we realize that that law is causing harm, that law is not producing a justice, the concept of justice that we believe in, we have to take steps to correct it. I don't know if that's I don't know if that answers your question, but that's the way I look at it.
One of our audience members has a gift for you.
Oh, yeah. I like gifts. Thank you. Thank you.
Do you want to explain what it is for?
Not many people get a gift out of a garbage bag.
That's
But
okay.
when I was in Japan 50 years ago, I learned how to make origami cranes.
Whoa.
And origami, if you don't know, is taking a square piece of paper and folding, folding, folding until you finally have something. So the cranes are a symbol of long life. And the Japanese believe that if you make 1,000 cranes, you're going to have a happy death and you're going to get a wish. So I'm giving you the cranes, but I'm also, Calvin, giving you the wish.
Thank you.
Now, when you make 1,000, you usually give them to somebody. And over the years, I've made 108 of these. So that means 108,000 that I've been folding and folding for the last 50 years. Archbishop Desmond Tutu was here at Marquette years ago, and I got to meet him, so he got 1,000 paper cranes. Jane Goodall was at UWM, and I got to meet her. And Alice Walker was at UWM, and I got to meet her. So I've been giving them to peace people. So Calvin, I hope you enjoy them. And I hope you get a wish that is really wonderful.
Well, thank you very much. It's okay that I give you a hug? Thank you so very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm gonna hang this up in my new clerk's office. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for spending the afternoon with us. Could you please give a round of applause to our guest, Calvin Duncan?